Hello everyone out there, and welcome back to another Fusion 360 live stream. I'm Jason Lichtman, and today we're going to be running through a Valentine's Day emergency. If you didn't already know, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, and you are supposed to get your loved one a gift. And unfortunately for me, I didn't exactly do that. Well, luckily I have Fusion 360 and I also have a laser at home. So I'm going to be using Fusion today to show you how we're going to make my wife a very last minute Valentine's Day gift. We have Aaron Magnan on the keyboard today, so if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in. Aaron will either answer it or I might answer it myself, depending on timing and things like that. But for the next hour, we are going to go through the entire workflow of taking an idea and turning it into a wonderful gift. And that's all going to start with a vector. We need to figure out what we're going to make today. And I guess we're going to start with some inspiration. So I had some ideas. You probably noticed that I updated the thumbnail for today's live stream earlier today. And I think we are going to be making a jewelry tree. And if you've never seen one of those, it's like a tree. It could be wood, it could be plastic, it could be metal, but it looks like a tree, and you hang earrings and bracelets and rings and things like that from the branches. And I think that would be a really great fit for us today. So let's go and look at some inspiration that I have. Here you could see, I just went on Google, by the way, and just looked at some images. Here you could see 6 examples of different kinds of these jewelry trees. They have some things that are in common with each other, some things that aren't, but overall I think that this is going to be a really great fit. As I mentioned, I have a laser. I happen to own a Glowforge Pro. It's a beast of a machine. It's awesome. I love it. It's not exactly like, a commercial Epilogue or full spectrum or a Trotec laser, but for the fact that I even have one is pretty awesome. So we're going to go and use my Glowforge. My cutting area is actually like 19.5 inches by about 11 inches. So we're going to be able to fit within those confines, but I think we're going to be able to make something pretty darn cool. And if you look at these particular shapes, I think the ones that are kind of more flat in nature, which is I would say 4 out of the 6 of these, I think that's going to be a little bit more fitting for us. But I'm not really a true artist, so we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to go and find a vector online that we can go and use to help us out, to make this a little easier. After all, I really only want to spend about an hour, maybe hour and a half max to be able to make this happen. So it all starts from me going online and finding a really good vector to start with, because like I said, I'm not a great artist. So we're going to go and share my screen here for a second. I'm on a website called 123RF. It's pretty popular. You can download images and vectors and a whole bunch of different stuff. There are other websites that do the same thing, many of which are totally free, many of which you pay for. I will tell you, though, that overall I've found from my experience that you get what you're paying for, so to speak. So if you are willing to pay just a little bit for a file, you'll get a much better result overall. So on 123RF, I like this site because you can pay for files. They have good quality content, and you could pay for individual files instead of paying for like a monthly plan or something like that. So we're going to go and search for an image here. We're going to search for a tree, and I don't want just a regular image. I do want a vector because I could bring that vector into Fusion. So let's do a quick search, and it looks like we have some pretty good results. And I would say this one on the right-hand side, this would be like pretty perfect for our application. I just don't happen to like that design. So we'll scroll down here and I start to see some things that I think are looking way cooler. I really like this one, but I could see there's a lot of really thin wispy stuff going on, which I think would be problematic. So I don't think that would work. This one is really good. But unfortunately, like the trunk, or at least the base here, is probably like the coolest part of this tree, and I don't think we're gonna end up using it. So I don't like any of these in particular. Let's change my search for a little bit here. We're gonna search for an olive tree. I really like olive trees. And now we're talking. Now I'm seeing some results that I really like. This is really looking like the kind of thing that I want. And I'm not seeing anything that's really jumping out at me. But overall, I think this is like where I'm trying to go. So I think it works. I'm trying to find like a mix between like a good looking tree, but then also something that has like character to it, but also isn't going to be too thin and wispy as well. Like that would be a problem. and I really don't want that. Actually, this one here at the top I think might even be perfect, and it looks like there are 4 different options. So that's pretty cool. Downloading one will get me all 4 options. It looks like you could download this in 4 different sizes: small, medium, large, and extra large. Those would all be raster or bitmap images. What I really want is the vector though. So I'd want that EPS. And it looks like it's going to take 10 credits, as it turns out, to download this image. So what you're going to want to do in this case is to buy credits if you're using this particular website. Once you have those credits, you could use them. 10 credits is like $10. So I'm spending $10 to get this file. And to me, it's worth it because I didn't say at the beginning of this live stream that I'm cheap. I just said that I'm a procrastinator and I waited too long. So I'm willing to spend the money if I could get something good, but I just want to make sure that I have the time to be able to make it happen. So here I have my file, 80556342. I'm going to open this up with Illustrator. And if you don't have Illustrator, there is like a free kind of equivalent to Illustrator called Inkscape, but Illustrator is a fantastic tool, and it is by far the industry standard for like graphic designers and some industrial designers and things like that as well. And I'm opening this up in Illustrator to start because although I could just pull this vector right into Fusion, I do need to make sure that it's a file type Fusion can open. And I downloaded an EPS file. Fusion will not open those. So I'm opening it up in Illustrator at the very least to save this as a DXF or an SVG or even a DWG that I could open in Fusion. Now I don't like this tree, so we're going to go and delete that one. I kind of like the other ones, but this one is the one I think we're going to work with today. So let's go and delete the rest of them. Let's look at this vector here, and I like to look at the layers to see if there's anything in here that I should just delete now while I have this open. And I could tell there's some sort of rectangle. Oh, that's like the entire artboard as it turns out. So we're going to take that and we're going to go and delete that as well. And then looking at what I have left here, again, I have another kind of funny rectangle, and then the rest is looking really good. That's perfect. One other trick that I like to use before I send it over to Fusion is I like to place this kind of more centered. So I'm going to go and use the X and Y coordinates here, and I'm going to replace this with 0. It's going to look like it's in this corner here, but it comes into Fusion better. So I'm a big fan of that. So I move that over, and then we're going to go to File, Export. We're going to export this as a DXF file, and I'm going to go and just put this on my desktop, and we're going to call this Olive Tree to Start Making Jewelry Tree. Yeah, that's good enough. All right, good. This is important. So it's going to ask you for the units. You want to make sure that this, well, actually, if you're trying to make this the exact size that it's in Illustrator, you'd want to make sure that this is correct. We're going to end up scaling this to the maximum size I could laser. So this kind of doesn't really matter all that much. But the key here is you do, generally speaking, want to make sure that whatever you pick in Illustrator as your output is also what you're picking in Fusion as your input. And that'll make sure that you're getting the same scale in both places. So I would choose inches or millimeters here. I like to change the scale to be like 1 inch equals 1 unit or 1 millimeter equals 1 unit. That's my preference. I'm going to go and say OK. And now let's fire up Fusion 360. There we go. I've got a blank file open here. And my preferred method for bringing in any kind of vector files is always to bring in DXFs, ideally. I love them. They come in the best. And I like to use this insert DXF workflow as opposed to file open or upload. Uploading and import and file open are great for other file types, but for DXFs in particular, this insert DXF is going to give you a lot more options that I think you're going to like. So let's go and do that. I'm going to pick a plane for this to show up on, and I'm going to choose the DXF file that we just looked at. And I'm going to make sure that those units are the same as the ones that I had in Illustrator. So I chose inches. Here I have some options that I think are important to look at. If you have lots of layers in Illustrator, you can choose to make them all separate sketches in Fusion, or you can make them all like merged into a single sketch. Depending on what I'm doing, I might choose one or the other. But just know that you can choose, which is really important. And the other thing is you get to choose to turn off layers if you don't want to see all the layers. So in this case, I only have one layer, so I'm going to leave that. Oh, last thing that I really like, control point frame. This allows you to basically convert the splines that come from Illustrator into more editable splines in Fusion. So if you're going to be like manipulating the geometry itself, you might want to turn on that control point frame. It's your choice if you do, but definitely I'd encourage you to play with that option and see if you like it. I'm going to go and say okay, and we're going to have a sketch here in Fusion in just a second. Let's do a nice front view and look at this. This is looking pretty good. I think it's promising for our project. If I go and I edit my sketch, next thing I like to do is to hover my mouse over the object to see how many profiles I have. And so what I'm finding out here is it turns out that all of the leaves, with a couple of exceptions, are not connected to the tree itself, like the branches or the trunk or anything. And that's definitely going to be a problem. We're going to want to fix that. We want all the leaves to like be lasered all in one piece. So I'm going to have to go and edit that. And if I zoom in a little bit, it looks like I have some areas of the tree that are kind of like chopped or like aren't going to show up. So I might need to fix this one over here and then that one over there as well. But overall, this is looking good. Now, before I start going and doing the editing, what I think I'd prefer to do is to make sure that this is the right scale, so I don't have to go and scale it later. I like to do it right away. And if you recall, I told you that my laser ends up having a bed of like 19.5 inches wide and 11 inches tall. So let's use that as a baseline. So for that, I'm going to go and just create a quick rectangle. And you'll notice that my default units are metric because I'm an engineer and I prefer metric, but we're gonna go and just change our units real quick to inches. Nice. And then we'll go and put in a dimension this way. Actually, my scale's great so far. 19.5 inches wide. And we're gonna go with 11 inches tall. And the reason I'm making this box is because I could just drag this roughly over my tree, and now I could see if I have room to scale this tree up or not. And I definitely do have room. So let's go and select the tree itself, just like that. I'm just doing like a box selection here. Now, one thing to warn you, and this might actually get worse because we're doing a live stream and my computer's doing a lot of like streaming of data, is that this particular vector has a lot of detail in it, and that can slow down my performance quite a bit, especially, you know, as you get more detailed. But I'm going to go and select that tree, and under modify, we're going to go with sketch scale here. And I'm going to go and we should have also moved the tree to align the origin, which we're going to have to do in a few minutes anyway, so I'll do that. But let's go and scale this up, and I'm going to try 2 as my scale factor. That looks decent, and that's probably good. I'll go and hit OK, and then we'll move our rectangle and see if that lines up nicely with our file. All right, cool. So now let's go and move that. Oh, that's actually pretty impeccable. That's awesome. The only thing I definitely want to do next is I want to move this so that it's going to line up with the origin. This is more of a preference thing, but it will make my life a lot easier later as well. You can see the origin kind of. It's like kind of right over here, this dot that has like, I don't even know what that symbol would be, but we're going to go and turn on the origin on this side, and now it looks like I'd expect. So that was just a little eyeball next to origin. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just select the entire tree, and then we're going to go and move this so that it's roughly centered. It doesn't have to be perfect, but roughly centered would be helpful. So we're going to go to modify, and I'm going to choose move, and we're going to use our manipulators to move this around. One thing I personally like to do is you'll see that you have different move types here, and you can use them however you wish to be able to move your objects around. So if you just wanted to move, like, you know, just left to right and up and down and not be able to move it the way that I'm doing, where I'm just like dragging it around, you could change that as well. You could make it so it just rotates, and you could do a whole lot of cool stuff with that. I think this is getting pretty good. And by the way, I could be a lot more particular about how I'm lining this up. I could, for example, make a rectangle that just barely fits around the tree, and then use that rectangle to figure out like the true center and then line it up like that. But this is an art project. I mean, Fusion 360, I didn't make this clear at the beginning, and I should. Fusion 360 is a professional CAD tool. It's great for industrial design and mechanical engineering and manufacturing and prototyping and a whole lot of really cool stuff. What we're doing today is really like DIY maker type stuff, right? Stuff you might do at home for fun, right? This is a project for my wife after all. But just know that when you have access to a tool like this, whether it's a commercial tool or not, you get to use it for all sorts of fun stuff, including an artsy project like this. So I'm not going to be super anal retentive on the positioning and things like that, but I could on another project, of course. So I think that positioning is pretty good, or at least good enough for me. I'm going to go and hit OK. The other thing I'm going to see here is at the bottom of this tree is all sorts of like funny, you know, it has like the roots kind of like sticking down. I want this to be a lot easier for me, so I'm going to go and draw a quick line, and I'll make this I like to draw crooked on purpose and then add constraints after. It's my preference. Make sure that I get the right constraint that I want. So we're going to go and add a horizontal constraint to that line, and then let's also add a midpoint constraint between the line and the origin, and that looks great. I'm actually quite happy with that. Now we have to do cleanup, and I'm going to warn you right now, based on what I saw in the leaves, this is going to be about I'm hoping 8 minutes or less of cleanup on this file before we get to the really fun 3D stuff. If all you care about is the 3D stuff, you could probably skip ahead and find that, but I'm going to spend the next 8 minutes or so cleaning up this file. So we talked about this area here. We're going to go and just add an arc, and there's my 3-point arc, and just connect this together. And all I really care about here is making sure that I have this closed profile, that this is all nice and closed. That looks good. I'm going to do the same thing right over here and go and clean that up as well. I could add tangencies and I could make this like super perfect and like nice and smooth, but I don't think you're going to see any of that when we make the real thing. All right, so the tree trunk is cleaned up. That one looks really, really good. Now let's go and deal with the leaves, and I'll admit there are a lot, so this is going to be a little painful. I'm going to go and double click on one of these edges, and it automatically is going to pick anything that's in the loop. So in this case, one of these leaves, and then I could just drag it until it overlaps with the tree. And sadly, I'm going to have to do that a lot of times right now to get all of these leaves in place. And one thing for sure is you want to make sure that it doesn't just barely cross. You kind of want a little bit more than you might expect. Otherwise, this is going to end up being really, really fragile. By the way, if you want to rotate these leaves, you would just select the leaf, hit M on your keyboard for move. Move copy, that is, and I could choose to, let's say, do this free move, and that lets me do rotations and translations in the same time. So I could just go and like rotate a little bit and then also drag it until I'm happy with the position. Now, and then hit enter when you're done. So do that as many times as you need, and sadly we're going to do that for the next few minutes, and we're going to clean up all these leaves. So I'm going to have to talk about something, and since you guys can't exactly talk to me, we're going to talk about some of the things that you should find interesting between Illustrator and Fusion. I was actually talking to a customer yesterday who is trying to have this workflow of Illustrator to Fusion, and I tell them, number one, DXF is the way to go. You can export a lot of different file types in Illustrator. DXF is the way to go for a variety of reasons, but overall that's like my preference for sure. The other thing to keep in mind is that the way that Illustrator does its math for all of these shapes that you see here is a little different than the way that Fusion 360 or actually any of the other 3D modeling like engineering programs do their math. And so the best example I could give you for that is going to be a circle. If you draw a circle in Illustrator and then you bring that into Fusion, you'd expect Fusion to see it as a circle. Of course, that's what I would expect. In reality, Fusion doesn't. Fusion's going to see it as a spline. And if any of you, I would hope, actually, you guys are watching live, type in the chat window why you think that might be, and I'll give you the answer in a couple of seconds. But you will see that Fusion is not going to interpret circles from Illustrator into circles in Fusion. It'll be a little bit different. I'll give you an example. Actually, let's jump back into Illustrator for a second. Let's start with New Design. And then we'll get back to the leaf fixing. Cool. So if I draw a square, of course, it's a square. Fusion's going to see it as a square. If I draw a circle, you'll notice that there isn't actually even a circle tool in Illustrator. It's actually an ellipse tool. And you can draw all sorts of wonky shaped ellipses, but if you hold shift while you're creating it, it will keep it uniform in like stretch, so it makes it a circle. But this, although it looks like a circle, isn't really a circle. So hopefully you've already answered in like the chat window why you think that might be. So let's look here. On the top left corner, I have my selection tool. This is where I could select my circle and I can move this around wherever I'd like. And you could see some specs. You could see like how big it is and where it's located and all that stuff. But if I use this other selection tool, this is a direct selection tool. I like to call it like the needle nose pliers, where you get to pick like the very specific thing you want to mess with. So if I select any of these corners, like the top, the right, the left, or the bottom, you'll notice that I can take them and I get these handles that show up. And these handles are the same kinds of handles you would see in splines, whether they're Illustrator splines or Fusion 360 splines. This is a spline thing. And if I drag this handle, you'll notice that now I have a super warped circle. It's actually not a circle at all. And the reason that this is all possible is because this was never a circle. It was never even really an ellipse. It was really a spline that was shaped to look like an ellipse or shaped to look like a circle. Another example is even if I don't actually warp the spline handles and I just grab the point here, I could end up with a very different shape. Now in Illustrator, this is actually something that's very helpful. You can use this to make lots of cool, really crazy shapes out of it, like apparently a smiley face sort of that you see on my screen right now. But when it comes to bringing this into an engineering tool like Fusion 360, this is exactly why you're not going to see it show up as circles. There are several tricks to get around that, but in short, they're not going to come into circles. So we still have quite a few of these leaves to go. So we're going to go and speed this up a little, hopefully. And we're going to go and move these over. And if I miss some of these right now, I'm not going to be too worried about it because we might end up having to go back and fix my sketch in some way or another later anyway. So I'm not going to be too worried about it. I'm just trying to get as much of these as possible. If I can get all of them minus, let's say, 5 or so that I miss, I'd be super happy. And if I were to guess, in total, there's probably like 100 of these or something. So we're making some good progress already, and hopefully this is going to go even faster than I was dreading it would, but we'll see in a second. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do after because I have time to kill anyway. And so what we're going to do is once we have all of these leaves connected to the tree, we're going to extrude this and give this a thickness. Now, on first glance, people would say, well, if you open this file in Illustrator and you're going to end up laser cutting, which is really a 2D thing anyway, why even bother with Fusion 360? That's a good question, actually. And I'll tell you that the reason you might want to do that is actually 2 things. Number 1, I never said that this jewelry tree is going to be totally flat. I said that we're going to laser it, which is a flat cutting process, but we might actually choose to assemble this to make it super 3D. If we go back to that inspiration that I saw, let's go and bring that back. You could see, you know, the one down at the bottom in the middle, that one's like, you know, made of metal and it's like cast. This top right corner, this one actually is mostly flat, but the base is 3D. But the one to the left, which is the top middle, that one actually is very much 3D. And doing that in Illustrator, I think, would be very difficult, actually. Fusion is perfect for those kinds of applications. There is another reason, though, that you might want to use Fusion for this, and that reason is something called kerf compensation. So challenge all of you to be able to put into the chat box what kerf compensation is. You have about 10 seconds before I tell you the real answer. But I'll tell you right now, actually, forget 10 seconds. I'm just going for it. Kerf compensation is, let's first define what kerf is. So kerf is the width of the cutting beam for laser cutting. And so if you were like using a table saw, that would be the width of the actual like cutter, right? You know, it's a circle cutter, it spins real fast, and it's like, you know, this wide, and it's going to remove material from the wood. The laser might be smaller, but it's still there. And when you're trying to assemble things together that are supposed to fit really nice and like interlock with each other, you want the fit to be perfect. And if you actually just create the shape and then laser it as is without compensating for the curve, you're going to get a loose fit between the parts, which is not ideal. So I have a whole video here on the YouTube live, it was a live stream, all about kerf. And we'll put a link to that so you could watch that later if you'd like to learn more about kerf. But the short answer is, if you would like to adjust for kerf, I think Fusion 360 is the perfect way to do that. So another reason that we're going to use Fusion instead of just doing all of this in Illustrator, because at the very least, the cleanup that I'm doing on these leaves, I could certainly do it in Illustrator. But overall, I think, having the two programs, I think is like my win, right? I get the best of both worlds. And let's zoom out here for a second. Sadly, oh my gosh, I still have so much more of this left to do. So we're going to keep going. You could tell I'm rearranging these a little bit and fixing like where they are, how they are, and things like that as well. But we're going to get through all of these leaves, and then we're going to get to the really good stuff. All right, so I was starting to tell you what we were doing. We are going to thicken this thing. We're going to make this so that leaves and the tree trunk are all going to be one piece. We're going to thicken it and start to visualize what this is going to look like. Then we're going to actually be able to make like the second piece. We're going to make the piece so that they like interlock like this. And so we're going to end up probably copying the first one, rotating 90 degrees, and then figuring out how to make the interlock. That's really what I think is going to come down to. And then after we do that, then we're going to end up having to flatten everything, which is an interesting topic for us. We're going to flatten the entire model so that I could laser it and see if I could fit everything on one sheet, although I predict based on the size that I picked that we probably need 2 sheets in the end. We'll see though. And so we're going to end up flattening it onto 1 or more sheets. We're going to apply our toolpaths because don't forget, Fusion 360 is a CAM tool as well, and that's pretty amazing. Those toolpaths are going to also have kerf compensated already, which is awesome. And then when all of that's done, we're going to output this to the laser. We're going to laser all of our parts. We're going to put all of them together, and we're going to have a wonderful gift for my wife that I very much hope that she's going to end up appreciating. We're going to see. Let's see, I think we're about 3/4 of the way through this as well. And this just goes to show, I mean, the whole point of live streams here are to make this real. So this is showing you exactly how to do this in real life, including sometimes the super tedious parts like I'm doing right now. And that is likely what you're going to have to face in real life too, whether it's this project or some other project. There are times where you might end up spending literally hours doing the same thing over and over and over again. And that's the kind of thing that generally people don't see. It's the kind of thing that happens behind the scenes, so to speak. But really take a project and make you appreciate the detail and the struggle and the work that went into it. So I really hope that she ends up appreciating this as well. And I think we're about 3/4 of the way through, if not more. We're looking really good. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a break from doing all of these leaves. We could go back later and fix the rest. We're going to have to, but at least just so that you get a little bit more fun stuff in, and I could get a little bit of a break from doing all these leaves. We're going to skip ahead just a little bit, and then we'll fix the leaves, and then we'll continue. Okay, so let's look at our profiles now. I still have that same profile, but now I could see all these leaves as well. This is all looking really good. I'm going to hit Finish Sketch, and we're going to go and thicken this. So we have to figure out how thick we should make this. So let's go and turn on my webcam here. I have a piece of wood that I'm going to end up using. This is a small piece of the bigger sheet that I'm going to use. I have my fancy calipers here. I like to use metric, as you heard earlier, so I set this all to metric. And we're going to measure this, and apparently this is 3.28 millimeters thick. So that's good to know. All right, that's helpful. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to thicken this 3.28 millimeters, but instead of just using the extrude and typing in 3.28, we're going to use the parameter table so that I don't have to remember that value all the time, like over and over again. And if I need to change that value later because maybe I run out of wood and I buy a different sheet or something like that, then I could change it in one place and it just changes it everywhere. So we're going to go, let's share my screen again, and we're going to go to Modify here, Change Parameters. And we're going to make a parameter, And we're going to make that parameter so that it's going to have our thickness in it. Hold on a moment. There it is. We're going to add a new one here called thickness. Got to spell this correctly. We're going to make this metric. Where's millimeters? There it is. 3.28, I believe, is what we had. And we're going to go and say, OK. Nice. Now we could use that or reference that whenever we want to. So let's go and do an extrude. So create extrude. And the easiest way to select everything, because I don't want to come in here and have to select all these leaves. It was tedious enough to go and move most of them. We're going to just go and box select over everything here, and it's going to select all the profiles. Whether it's connected to the tree or not, it should select it. And then all I have to do is actually deselect whatever I don't want. That would make my life pretty easy. Give that a second. As I told you, there's a lot of geometry in here, so that might take a moment. Hopefully, I'll call it 10 seconds or less so we can move on and not be bored. Let's see here. Now, don't forget, one of the cool things about Fusion 360 is our minimum hardware requirements are really low. So it means that you could be using a relatively inexpensive computer, or really entry-level computer, or really old computer, and it will still work. But it doesn't mean that having a better computer wouldn't be helpful. So having better specs, faster CPU, more cores, more RAM, all of that stuff is really good. It's helpful. You don't have to spend $4,000 on a computer, but if you have some extra money to spend on getting a better computer, you will have a better experience. So things like this will take less time to calculate. Here for the distance, well, first thing I want to do is I want to make this symmetric front and back. I'm going to change the measurement to be whole length, and then I'm going to type in here thickness, and you'll see this value pops up from that table. And now I could just go and click on it, which is easy. And now it's doing some like preview calculations in the background to make sure that this is all possible. And I'm gonna hit OK. And in just a second, I'm gonna have a tree, or at least something that looks kind of like a tree. And we're gonna go and make that a whole lot more detailed in a few seconds. And now it's also computing. There's some math involved in there as well. Give that, I would say 5 seconds, and I think that should be done as well. So the next thing I like to do, especially when I know that some of these leaves are probably not really connected properly, is to look at the bodies folder and see how many bodies we have. So if I go over here to this arrow, I could see that we have 52 bodies, which means there are still 51 leaves that I have not yet merged with the rest. So I haven't done a perfect job yet, but that's okay. I'm also looking at this thing and I'm seeing the bottom is a little jaggedy. So what I could do is I could go back and edit my sketch and I could clean that up, or I could try the probably quicker approach and I could say modify split body. Let's go and split this body right over here. And we're going to split it using that top plane. So let's go and rotate a little bit. Just that one right there. Perfect. And then now I could just go and find these bodies in my tree. Let's go and find, let's say this one. That'll be 56, and we'll go and remove that. I also don't want this one. We'll go and remove that as well. That's the one we actually want. That's the one we don't want, and just get rid of whichever ones I don't want. If I clean up the sketch, this would actually be, in some respects, faster, in other respects, maybe slower, because that sketch does have to solve every time. So your choice how you want to do it. But overall, this is looking much, much better. This is looking actually quite awesome. Now I still haven't fixed all my leaves, so I definitely need to do that, but I do want to give you a little hint of what's to come. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up selecting this entire tree, and I believe that was this body 58. I'm going to go and hit Control C on my keyboard. If I were on a Mac, this would be Command C, and then Control V for paste, and it's going to make this copy. I can choose right now if I want to rotate it. My personal preference would be to just leave it as is and then do the rotation as like a separate feature. That's my personal way I do it. So I'm going to go and hit move, and then I'm going to pick this new body, which is, oh, not face. Let's change that. We're going to change it to bodies. We're going to move body 59, and we're going to choose to rotate it using that center axis, that Y axis. And then we're going to go and rotate that 90 degrees or -90, whichever one you want. Doesn't matter. And now that's looking really awesome. So really, as soon as I fix these leaves, I think it's going to look way better. Now, if I want this jewelry tree to not have leaves on purpose, then really I could have just extruded this without the leaves from the beginning, and that would have actually been a big time saver on this live stream, as it turns out. But I chose the hard way, and we are going to stick with that. So let's go back to our extrude, or not our extrude, our sketch. We're going to go and edit our sketch. I'm going to fix those 51 leaves, unfortunately, that are still remaining. And then we're going to have the entire thing update automatically, because remember, Fusion 360 is parametric, unlike Illustrator. And that's one of the things that I love about Fusion, is that when you make all this work, you could go back and change something, and it actually affects a whole lot of other things as well. I love that. So we're going to go, and we're about 4 down into our 50 that are left. That's pretty good. We're making some progress already. We're going to keep going. Now, the only ones that are a little bit harder to edit, at least in Fusion, are the ones that are already connected, but like connected weakly, I would say, like, you know, not very strong, like it's really thin and wispy. Like something like this leaf would be more annoying to move. I can do it, but it's more annoying, and I already am a little short on time here. So we're going to skip that for now. And worst case, it breaks off. Not going to be a big deal. This tree has, you know, several hundred of these leaves, as it turns out, and I don't think any of them in particular are going to be missing, or at least missed. They won't be missed. So let's continue on here. We're about 10 down maybe out of our 50, so this should be another 2 minutes or so, and we should be ready to go, ready to rock. You could also, by the way, change the size of any of these leaves as well. Really, it's your choice how you want to do it. And as a reminder, you could have done all of this leaf modification stuff in Illustrator if you wanted to, right? Because Fusion is going to be great at the curve compensation stuff. It's going to be great at the 3D aspect of like how these are going to join together. But, you know, whichever one you want to choose for this kind of like tedious vector modification. Illustrator might even be easier, but it's your choice. And again, Inkscape is a perfectly suitable replacement for Illustrator if you don't want to spend the money on Illustrator itself. Right, and I work at Autodesk. I do not work at Adobe, so I'm not officially endorsing Illustrator itself. Right, I'm just saying it's common. It's what I use, and we're looking pretty good here. If at any point, by the way, I'm curious to see if I missed any of the leaves, all I have to do is hit Finish Sketch. And then once the model updates, I look at that bodies folder, and any of those bodies that are separated from the tree, those are going to be the ones that I still need to go back and fix. The other thing to keep in mind is that although I'm editing the sketch, I could also, if I wanted to, wait till the extrusion is done, and then I could use the move command to move the body, like the 3D body over, and then I could merge it or combine it with the rest of the tree as well. So really what it comes down to is there are a lot of different ways to do the same thing. It's entirely your choice on which way you want to use it. It doesn't matter to me. As long as you're making cool stuff, I am very happy. All right, this is looking great. Side note, by the way, you probably have noticed that I look a little different on this live stream than most of my previous live streams. I was dared to grow a mustache, and it looks like this. Let me actually show you a little bit more clearly. This is what I look like apparently with a mustache. I've never in my life grown a mustache before, and this is what it turns out I look like with a mustache. So my intent, because I'm not a big fan of this, my intent is that this Valentine's Day gift is really going to be 2 things. Number 1 is this jewelry tree that we're working on, and the second thing is going to be that I'm going to shave off this terrible mustache. There is only one chance that you guys have that I don't do that, which is put in the comment section right now if you vote yay or nay. Yay is going to be keep the mustache, nay is going to be kill the mustache, shave that off, never try that again. Either way, I'll be happy, but you know, go ahead, give us your thoughts as well. All right, so almost done here. I think we're at the last few leaves, and then we get to make the really good part of the project. And we're about 40 minutes in. I think we're actually on track with our schedule that I had for myself. So that's awesome. Let's give that a shot. So I'm going to hit Finish Sketch. And just like you'd expect from our parametric software, it's going to go through that entire timeline from the very beginning over here to the very end. It looks like I still have quite a few that are not merged. So let's go and see which ones they are. And it looks like this region, this region, and then that one. All right, that's good. That's good to know. So let's go back and fix those as well. So we're going to go back in here. This one here was my straggler. We're going to go and move that. We had a patch of them right over here as well. Actually, we'll move this one first. This one will make some space. Perfect. Few more over here, and this is actually coming together really nicely. I think I'm pretty happy with this. I hope you guys are too. Nice. Nice. And then we had that patch on the right hand side with about 10 of them, I believe, and then we are finally good to go. All right, so let's go and finish those off and just be happy we don't have to do it ever again. Nice. Also, by the way, if any of you have made one of these before, I would love to know about it. So please feel free to put that in the comments as well. We'd love to hear about it. And also, we have, you could post the picture online. We'd love that. Hashtag Fusion360. We're always big fans of being able to see what our customers are up to, whether what you're doing is super commercial related or even for fun on the side. That's perfectly fine too. I think we might have gotten them all. I'm pretty happy with that. I think this one and then maybe this one, and then we are done. Awesome. Let's give that a go. Finish my sketch. Cross my fingers. So close. 3 left. No, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 left. All right, let's find them. We've got. Oh no, it is 3 left. So these 2 down below. This one, and this one. Let's see, that one. Memorize this. Okay, down below, right-hand quadrant. Let's fix those and be done. All right, so we had. Where did it go? Where did it go? This one, I believe, was one of them. Oh man, did I lose track of it already? I really hope I didn't. I think I might have lost track of it. How did I lose it? I definitely lost track of it. I am sorry, everyone. I thought we were done for a second. I am not done. I lost track of the 2 remaining leaves. We're going to finish those leaves and then we get to the really good stuff. And like I said, we won't have to deal with any of those leaves again, thankfully. That one right there and this one. All right, don't forget that. Okay, this one, and then we are done. Awesome. Super happy. Okay, done. So now that we have all those leaves done, let's go back and talk again about what we're doing to actually turn this into 3D. So we extruded this using the thickness measurement from our parameter table. We made a copy. We rotated that copy 90 degrees, and that's exactly where we are right now. Overall, this is looking really good. The only thing that I'm thinking we're going to end up running into problems with is kind of in this region right here in the top and the middle. I see some kind of interferences, and more importantly, when we do our, we have to do this like tongue and groove kind of thing going on here. And when I do that, I'm pretty darn sure that some of these leaves are like entire branches are going to get chopped off. And that would be very problematic. So I have an idea, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to hide the original for a second. Let's call this original. It's spelled very much wrong. Let's try that again. Original. There we go. This is going to be, the second one is going to be our copy. And let's split the copy into 2. Let's try that. So we're going to go to Modify, Split Body. Let's choose this body here. Let's use the center plane and split that in half. And oh, that's looking way better. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. We're going to take this piece and we're going to remove that because that would get chopped off for sure. This thing is also going to get chopped off and we don't want it. So let's get rid of all that stuff. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be left with 2 options to consider. And we'll have to choose which one of those we're going to go with. I don't know which one's going to look better yet. And so we have this guy. Let's hide that for a second. We have this one. Hide it for a second. Oh, there we are. We have 2 slivers. So let's go and get rid of those as well. And nice. Let's show this one, and let's see what this would look like if we mirrored it. So we're gonna go and say create a mirror. We're gonna mirror the body, the entire body for this thing, and we're gonna mirror it across that center line. And then we're also gonna go and combine this together. That looks pretty good. Nice. So we're gonna call this maybe option 1. Option 01. Let's hide that. Let's show the other one. Let's see what this one would look like if we mirrored it as well. So create a mirror, this body across this center plane right there. Oh, that's very different. Let's go and combine these together as well. That looks pretty darn good. We'll call this option 2. There we go. And let's show the original with option 2. Oh, that's interesting. I am not so sold on the big gap in the middle. I'm not a big fan of that. Let's see option 1 again. Oh, way better. Way better. I like option 1. If you want to vote right now, you have like 5 seconds to vote right now on which one of these you like. But I'm thinking I'm going to go with option 1. And yeah, I'm just going to go with option 1. I hope that's okay, everyone. So now we need to figure out how we're actually going to go and combine these together. That's going to be the hard part, so to speak. So let's look at both of these for a moment. I have option 1. It has a funny thing going on in the middle. Let's actually clean that up as well. And if you don't remember, Fusion 360 has these great direct editing capabilities. So I could just select that region and actually just hit delete, and it kind of magically fixes it, which is amazing. I'm also going to go and get rid of, let's say, that section, because I could see that as being problematic. And overall, actually, this is looking great. Let's draw what I think is going to be how we're like tongue and groove this together. I'm going to pick this plane. We're going to go and create a quick sketch. And I'm going to just draw a rectangle in this view. So we're going to go and just draw a quick rectangle. I oversized it by a lot. But we're going to go and make the width of this. If you remember, right, so when these things go together, in one case, like the cut is actually going to be the thickness of the material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dimension this, and we're just going to call this thickness, which is why I'm happy that I put that in the parameter table, so I don't have to worry about having to type in that value over and over again. And so this looks really good. I'm going to center this thing using that origin on that line right there. It should snap right over to the right spot. Oh, this is looking great. I want this thing to be super tall, so I'm just going to pick a number that's like way bigger. Like 12 inches is more than fine. And then I want to split between the two, because I think on one of them I'm going to have to cut the top, and the other one I'm going to have to cut the bottom, so that they do this thing and they actually merge. So let's draw a quick line. I'm going to go with a crooked horizontal line on purpose. I then put in my horizontal constraint like I like doing. I'm going to go and trim my lines here. I actually don't even need to trim it if I don't want to. It doesn't really matter very much, but I like to trim them, so I'm going to go and trim it. This is kind of me just being a little old school from way back when. And I'm going to choose here how high I want this like interference to be between the parts. I'm going to go with like 2¼ inches. I think that'll be good. I think that'll work. We might have to adjust that based on a bunch of things. Don't forget, if I wanted to go super hardcore here, I could do like finite element analysis and really check if this thing is going to be strong enough. But for now, I'm just going to guess, and we'll see where it goes. I'm going to say finish my sketch. Let's cut this very top off of my part. Actually, let's cut this entire region, because otherwise they won't fit together. So I need to cut this region too, I think. And we're going to go and cut this all the way through. And for my distance, the easiest way to do, I could just say all the way through. That's actually the best way to do it. Let's make sure we're only cutting this one thing, which is option 1, and that looks good. And so I'll say okay. And let's see if we got what we wanted. See if I have to maybe fix my extrusion or something like that. No, this is actually exactly what I wanted. So I have my cut, but if I show the original, there's still an interference here. So what I might want to do is, I could use another sketch, but I'm actually going to go and use the combine tool. We're going to mess with the original, right? So let's go and select the original design here. We're going to use option 1 as our tool, and we're going to say, let's cut the original using that tool, but I want to make sure to turn on this keep tools button, because otherwise that tool is going to be like consumed and disappear forever, and I don't want that. So we're going to say keep the tool, hit OK, cross my fingers. Let's see what we got. Let's go and turn off our origin. I don't need to see that. Let's hide option 1. Oh, this is exactly what we wanted. We have this slot right there. We have the opposite slot on the above, and that means that now I could, and I'll just use the move tool just to demonstrate this for a second. The way we're going to end up assembling this is from above. So we're going to end up dragging the piece from above down into position until they lock together, you know, kind of like that. And I think this is going to be great. So I'm actually very happy with this. We don't need option 2 anymore. I'm going to go and remove that from my design. Don't hit delete. It's a little different. Remove is like a point in time where you delete, but delete is like deleting it from the very beginning, and it deletes everything that you did since then that is affected by it. You don't want that. So let's go and remove that. And now we have a cleaned up model. I'm also realizing that I messed up. Actually, from the very beginning, I should have saved this design, because if for whatever reason my battery died or something like that, I would lose this work, because autosave only works if you're smart enough to save your design the first time. Let's actually do that right away before I go any further. So I have a project here for my live streams, my Valentine's Day, and this is going to be called Jewelry Tree. There we go. From now on, autosave is going to be my friend. So that's awesome. Let's also, by the way, start to make this look cool. So I'm going to go with A for appearance here, and that's just a shortcut. I'm going to go to wood. Let's go and find wood. And I like to use, I think walnut might be too dark. Let's go and see what this would look like in cherry. I'm going to drag that onto my design. It's still a little too dark actually for this. So I'm going to drag oak right onto here. I could drag it onto the design, but here's another cool trick. If you take one of these new colors you just brought in and you drag it onto another one that's already been assigned to stuff, it'll automatically replace the assigning. Magic. Awesome. So now we have this as oak. This is looking really good. Let's go and make a base for this as well. So for that, we're going to go and use the origin. Let's go and create a quick sketch on this origin. I'm going to go and use a rectangle. And you know, I don't use the center rectangle very much, but in this case, I think the center rectangle is perfect. So we're going to go and just draw it off in space. Then I like to add my constraints. So I'm going to add a coincident constraint with my origin. And I'm going to go and pick some like visual that looks sort of right. I don't need this to be ginormous. I think something like that would probably be pretty good, maybe a little smaller. Let's see what this ends up being in dimensions. It's 9 inches, almost 10 actually. Let's try 8. Oh, that's pretty good. And let's try, oh, 6 is perfect. Let's try 6 by 8. That's looking great. And then I might want a cool border around this as well. So let's actually do an offset. And we're gonna offset this like 1/4 of an inch. And that looks awesome. Cool, all right, so let's do this. I'm gonna take this shape here, the smaller square. We're gonna go and extrude this down. Now, before I probably hear about this later, you probably are already putting in a bunch of comments on the channel about how I'm not using components. And that is true. A lot of people will tell you the very first thing you should always do is create a component and put stuff inside the component. There are a lot of benefits of doing that. And there are a lot of reasons that people say that you should do that. I do that a lot of the time, but I don't do that all of the time. In this particular case, I am just going to make them into bodies, and that is also okay. If I need to, I can always convert them into components later. Is that the same thing as making the components from the beginning? I'll just tell you, no, it's not. There are some nuanced, super nerdy details that are different that might be important to you later on, but for the most part, they're close enough, and I'm just gonna go with it. So let's go and make a new body. I don't want it to join. And then for the thickness, instead of 1 inch, we're gonna just type in that value, thickness, and that looks really good. Then we're gonna go back and show my sketch again. Let's hide my bodies for a second. This is that same sketch. Now we're going to extrude the whole thing. And if I show my bodies again, I don't want to just extrude from this going down. That would actually cut through the base that I already have. That's not what I want. What I really want is, I definitely want a new body, but I don't want it to start where the sketch is. I really want it to start on the bottom of, let's see here. Oh, this is actually hard to see. Okay, so I can't see it. That's okay. I'm going to select and hold. And that's like a magic trick that's going to let you be able to select things that are not visible. And sadly, that's not letting me see this very clearly. All right, I give up. Let's try this again. I'm going to just hit cancel. We're going to just hide. Let's just do this from the beginning. I know the trick. Now I know. Okay, live streams, that's how we do it. We're going to go and select both of those shapes again. Instead of putting a thickness first, it'll just be easier. I should have just hit distance 0 and then I wouldn't have to cancel. We're going to now change the start from object, and that'll be the bottom of my part. Now I'll type in negative thickness. Make sure this is still set to new body. And this is exactly what I actually wanted. So this looks quite good. That's exactly what I wanted. Let's apply our appearances that we had already. So I'm going to drag those on as well. And now this is looking really good. Awesome. I am very happy with this. If you like this, please let us know. But now we're on to the next stage of our design. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save again. This time we're going to say ready for manufacturing. Cool. And what we want to do is we want to flatten everything, and we also want to be able to add our toolpaths with our curve compensation. And just from a timing perspective, we're about 55 minutes into our live stream. I have about 15 minutes left. So we're going to go a little over an hour. We're going to go to like an hour 10, hour and 15 max. I don't think we're going to go any further than that. And that should include everything that we have left. So don't worry about that. So here we have our parts, and we need to flatten it. Now, many of you have probably seen online that we have on our publicly available roadmap, which you can find under Help, Community, Roadmap. You can find that we, in the future, are planning to release nesting. And nesting is the magic thing that you are going to want to be able to automatically flatten this and also position everything perfectly to be able to like maximize how many of these you could fit on a sheet and things like that. But nesting is not publicly available yet, and these live streams are intended to show you what is available. So I'm going to show you an alternative that I like using until true nesting, like real nesting, is available. And so you probably know that if you go to Tools, there's an add-in section. You can go online to this Fusion 360 App Store, and you can see that there are plenty of apps that are pretty darn awesome. And if I search for Nest, unfortunately, I'm not going to find anything here. But what most people don't know is that you can also search Google, and there are other people that have made applications or add-ins for Fusion that have just chosen not to put it on our store. They have their reasons. I don't necessarily agree with them, but they don't put it in the store. So we're going to search here for nesting Fusion 360 add-in. There it is. And one of the things you're going to find here is you're going to find this one right here, Manual Nesting Script for Fusion 360 by a gentleman named Patrick Rainsbury, whom I know personally and is awesome, but he refuses to put his applications on our store. So we're going to go and find his GitHub. So let's go, and that's where he keeps it. If you actually go to this video, it'll explain how his nesting tool works. And I believe also in the description here, it'll have a link to his GitHub account where you could find it. And apparently he calls this thing Nester. So that's what we want. When we go to this GitHub, by the way, you can get rid of just this Nester part and just go and find his username. He has a lot of really cool things that he does here in the add-in environment. As an example, this one here called Sheeter will connect the parameter table that I've been using with Google Sheets, which is pretty darn cool. You can make some cool stuff out of that. But we're going to go and use Nester. Now, I've already downloaded this and also installed it. So I'm just showing you at the moment where you're going to go and find it. Once you have that set up, you're going to go and find this Nester tool. which for some reason is grayed out for me right now, which is not good for my live stream. So let's go and turn it off real quick, and we'll turn it back on, and then hopefully it will work the way it's supposed to. There it is. Okay, now it's not grayed out. So I just turned it off. I turned it back on. We're going to go and choose Nestor. And what it's going to ask me with Nestor is, what is the thing that's not going to move? So pick a base face, pick the other objects like this one. And it's already kind of yelling at me when I try to pick this. Oh, it's actually not yelling at me yet. It will yell at me in a moment. Then I'm going to go and pick an edge for this to follow. So I'm going to go and pick an edge. And when I say okay, it's yelling at me that everything is really the same component. Really, I don't have separate components, and I need that. So I got a bunch of errors, and that's okay. We're going to take this bodies folder, and we're going to right click and say create components from those bodies. It automatically makes them, and we'll rename this as well. So this is base 01, and this is going to be base 02. And now they're all components, which is what I wanted. I also, because I know how this Nestor thing works, I want to take this base 1 and I want to make it so it doesn't move. So everything else will move relative to it. So we're going to go and ground that. Or if you're like many of the people out there that don't like grounds, like using ground, you could also just use a as-built joint between the origin of that part and the origin of your assembly. Same idea, slight differences as well. We can make a whole video about the differences on that. So now I have my base 1 not moving. Let's try that add-in again, the Nestor add-in. Let's go and turn that back on because it crashed on me when it didn't work. Then we're going to go and run that Nestor add-in. We're going to pick that flat face that's going to stay there. Select another face of the other objects. Select a direction or an edge for this to move. It's going to move that way right now. And then a rough spacing between them. And I'll just warn you, this is not perfect. Nesting in Fusion is going to be even better. But I do like that I have this before, until I get that. So there we go. Okay, so now what it did was it automatically applied some joints. And I can still move these things around, except this one, because we put a joint. But I could still move these around, I could still rotate them and all that good stuff. But I want to be able to fit these on sheets. So what I'm going to do here actually is I'm going to go back a little bit in time. I'm going to create a quick sketch. And we're going to do exactly the sketch that we made before. So I'm going to make, I think we're going to need 2. So we're going to make 2 of these rectangles. I'm going to make this one 19.5 inches by 11 inches. I'm going to take this one and we're going to make this one equal. So we'll go and make those equal. We're also going to make these equal as well. And then to make this also easier on me, I'm going to make the left edge here like the same on both. There we go. All right. And then let me go and try to place this, something like that. I think is probably decent. Or actually, now that I'm thinking about this, I think I might need to rotate all of this. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to rotate it. Let's go and rotate that. 11 by 19.5. We're gonna switch the direction there. And then this one's gonna be like here. And then this one, yeah, we could go and leave that there. It's fine. Okay, so let's hit finish. Let's go back to the end of our tree here. No pun intended there. And we're gonna take just this tree and we're gonna go and move this one, and we're gonna go and move this one. And let's hide our sketch. It's kind of in the way right now. Let's also grab this guy and move it out of the way. Good. Okay, cool. So this one's probably going to have to be over here. This one's probably going to be over here. And I could also move the sketches a little bit because I didn't constrain them. That's part of why I didn't fully constrain those sketches. Is I could still move the sketches even though I'm not in the sketch itself, which I think is helpful. And then I'm going to take this tree. I could show my joints, by the way, and if I double click on this joint, I could even start to edit it, and I could start to rotate it from here, which I think is helpful. Let's do the same thing with this one as well. We're gonna go and rotate this one 90 degrees, and that looks good. And then I'm just gonna manually move these until they fit. This one's gonna be really tight. Actually, this tree might be bigger than the other one. Let's swap them. Yeah, oh wow, we're just barely gonna fit. Cool, this is awesome. All right, great. So now I'm gonna take this one and we're gonna move that over here. Also just barely fitting. Awesome, okay. So now I have my manual nesting. My manual nesting is done. Let's get to the part where we're going to go and add the toolpaths. So we're going to go and switch from design over to manufacture. We're going to create a new setup, and we're going to end up having to have 2 of these, but we're going to start off with, let's say, this one. We're going to pick this object right there and this one. Right? Those are the only 2 things I want in this particular setup. I want to make sure the z-axis is face up towards the laser head, so that's good. And then I could also fix the x and the y axes and things like that if I need to. That's looking pretty good. Then I'm also going to go and make another new setup right off the bat. This one's going to be for the other piece. Let's go and grab that. Oh, that's too much stuff. Let's go and pick the specific pieces. And you'll notice sometimes it's easier to just rotate around so that the sketch isn't in your way. And then we're also going to go and pick a new z-axis like that. And, oh, I must not have picked it properly. Let's try that again. Oh, much better. Flip the z. And that's looking much better, except my model somehow misselected. Let's try it one. Hopefully last time. I don't want to redo that over and over. Oh, much better now. Okay, good. So I have my 2 setups. Let's start with setup number 1. We're going to go to, oh, and one thing I forgot to make sure is I want to make sure this isn't milling. This is going to be cutting. And so that's looking good. We're going to go to fabrication. We're going to choose a 2D profile. Oh my gosh, and I'm realizing I didn't finish my design. And that's my fault. What we did do is we figured out the interlocking between the trees, but we didn't figure out the interlocking between the base and the trees. So let's actually go back to my design. Let's go back in time a couple of steps as well. Before they were even turned into components. This will make this even easier. And what I might want to do here is create another sketch. We'll go and use this view here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a couple of rectangles for where I want these things to like stick out. So we're going to hide, actually we're not going to hide the base. We're going to project it to make this a little bit easier on me. I'm going to do a projection of the base. Nice. I'm going to hide the base itself. I don't need those. Cool. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. I'm going to draw it on the very tip here like this. I think that's going to work great. And I'm going to trim this out a little bit. That looks pretty good. Yep. I'm going to put in a dimension between these. And this could be anything you want. It looks like 1/2 inch is probably fine. So I'm going to go with 1/2 inch. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And actually, if I want to make this even easier on myself, I could just go and draw a line like that. I don't even know if this is going to be easier, but it's just a different way to do it. And we're going to draw a vertical line like that. Draw another vertical line. Perfect. We'll put in a dimension between them as well. We'll put 1/2 inch. All right, so that's looking pretty good. And if I want to be a little bit more particular, I would maybe also put tabs here too to make sure that this isn't going to just be held in by 2 of these tabs. I probably want a couple more. So let's say I draw these as well, and we'll go and put some dimensions on that. I'm not going to bother to trim these because we're already a little bit, a lot over our time, and I don't want this to be forever. So we're going to go with 1/2 inch there as well. We're going to go with 1/2 inch here. Perfect. Cool. Now what we're going to do is we're going to extrude this, and we're going to extrude just these 2 sections right there of all of these, and we're going to extrude them, let's say, to an object, and that object will be the back of this thing, and I'm going to join them together, and that's exactly what I was hoping for. I have to do this one more time, so let's go and do this for the other part of the tree. Nice. Give that a second. Perfect. We're going to go and draw, and I'll probably do this a little faster than last time, I think. We're going to go with something like this. And then in the middle, I think I only need 1 of these, is what my prediction is. We'll also go and project our base number 2. So let's go and do that. Nice. Perfect. Let's put in our dimensions. So this is going to be 1/2 inch. And if I wanted this to be more easily adjustable, I'd probably also put in my parameter table, something that's like tab width, and make that 1/2 inch. And this way I reference tab width over and over again. And if I need to change this, it would just change everywhere in multiple sketches. In a single sketch, you can make it so like this dimension will reference that one, which is helpful. You could also type in a dimension number, like D65 was what just showed up there for a second. And you could use that method as well. Either one is fine. I just showed you 3 different methods and they're all good. Let's go back here to object, select the back here, join this. And now we can go and rebuild the entire thing. Oh, we forgot one more step. We need to do a couple of combine commands so we can actually have the holes in the bases. So we're going to do a combine of this base using both of those trees as my cutters. We're going to cut and then we're going to say keep the tools. Nice. We're going to do that again with the base number 2. Choose this one and then also this one. Keep the tool, make sure that's in cut, and let's verify that that actually worked. Oh, this is great. This is exactly what I want. So now if I hide the trees, you can see I have this cutout in the base, and this is exactly what I need to be able to make this. All right, good. So I fixed my problem, and we're gonna go all the way to the back to the end. Hopefully everything's still moved in the right positions and stuff. I'm crossing my fingers. No, it didn't, and that's my fault as well. I forgot to capture the position because when I was moving everything, I really should have done that and I didn't. That's my fault. Let's fix that. So we're gonna go and pick this guy. If I remember right, we're turning this 90 degrees. We're gonna go and move that, let's say over here. We're gonna take this one. We're also gonna turn that 90 degrees. We're gonna move that right over here. And then we're gonna take this one and move it right there. Perfect. All right, so sadly we're pretty much where we were before, right? Like we're not that much further forward, except we now have the correct shapes on my parts. This is what I should have done earlier, is I should have hit capture position to actually record it. That was my mistake. Now we can go back to that manufacturer space. I might have to fix my setups unless I happen to choose the right block with the right tree. And I might have, who knows? We're gonna find out. This one, and then if we activate that, yeah, this isn't right. Let's go and fix that. This one is actually gonna be this body and this one. And this is also gonna be cutting, and the stock is going to just be, I'll call it a fixed size box. You know what, to be honest, for my post-processor that I'm gonna use, the size of the stock doesn't even matter. So I'm just gonna go and leave that. It doesn't really matter to me. Let's go and activate setup number 1, and I'll show you the process we're going to follow. We're going to go and add a 2D profile. And I like to pick the tool right away. This is the tool itself. I mean, it's a laser, but what you want to make sure is you pick the right kerf, because this is where we're going to do kerf compensation. Here you can see I have a cloud library for my tool called Glowforge. And what I'm going to do here is see what I have in it. And I have a bunch of different kerf compensations. These two happen to be the same, but they're just different materials that I use. And so you can name this however you want. And so I like to go and use these, but I also like to make sure I do a kerf check before I actually make my parts. So again, watch my live stream all about kerf. That'll tell you how to be able to check for kerf and to figure out what that should be. If you want to use a different value, you would just go and say, make a new laser tool. You're going to go and say, in this case, it's going to be a laser cutter. You get to choose what units you want to use. And maybe in this case, I'm going to use like 0.05 millimeters, which is pretty small. And then I don't care about feet and speed for my laser. I'm just going to ignore all that. All I care about is a description. So we're going to say Glowforge, and this is going to be called uncertified material 1/8 inch. Actually, it's 3.28 if I remember right. 3.28 mm. Perfect. So now we're going to go and use that tool. We're going to pick under geometry what we're going to machine or what we're going to laser cut. Now the order is going to be important to me because I want to make sure my part doesn't move on me. So I'm going to pick the top of this piece first. You'll notice here under loops, it'll let you choose to do the entire part, inside loops and outside, but I like to just say, let's start with the inside loops first. I also like to go under passes and I turn on my compensation to in computer. For my laser, that's what I want to do. And then for the linking, I'm going to turn off these leads. I don't need them. And I'm going to go and say, okay. Perfect. So now I have my first toolpath. So the first thing it's going to do is cut those regions. And if I zoom in really far, you're going to see the blue line is slightly inset to make sure that this gives me the correct size. That's the kerf compensation part of things. The next thing I'm going to want to do is actually just duplicate this particular toolpath. So I'm going to say duplicate this toolpath. We're going to edit this existing one. And for this, I'm just going to say, let's change the geometry to the outer loops only. So it'll cut the outer. And then we're going to go and duplicate that one more time. Let's go and find that duplicate button. And we're going to do that same thing. This time we're going to choose the tree, and it's going to do the outer loop of the tree. Let's go and deselect the chain, select the tree. This one's going to be a lot more calculating, just as a warning, but we're going to go and do that. And then we're going to go and choose the names for this. So this is going to be called base inside, base outside, and then tree. Perfect. What I might want to do for setup number 2 to make my life easier is I might want to just go and take these 3 and copy them. Go to setup number 2 and activate it. And let's go and paste those in here. Boom. Okay. These are all going to show up as invalid. I need to reselect what I want. So for this very first one, we're going to go and select the top of the square. For the second one, we're also going to pick the top of the square. And then for the third one, we're going to pick the top of the bigger, the second tree. Nice. Everything is looking really good. Almost done here. Great. Okay. So now we're getting to the really good stuff. Now we can actually send this to the laser and make this. And yeah, I do have to move things over just slightly. I want to move, let's say, move this one over so that they're not touching. Now it looks much better. Let's go back over to manufacturing. I might need to regenerate the toolpaths. That's okay. Let's go and regenerate everything. And then we're going to post-process this. We're going to run this on the laser. We're going to put this together, and we're going to do all of that in no time flat. So it looks like I underestimated the time this is going to take. So it looks like we're at 1 hour and 15 so far. We might have another 5 or 10 minutes left. Regenerate this as well. Excellent. So the post processor for my machine is called the Glowforge Colorific post processor. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick my setup. I'm going to go to post this. Right now it's still calculating the tree toolpath. So it's going to yell at me a little bit. I have to wait for this to finish. When that's finished, I'm going to go and post this out, and it will not yell at me. Instead, it's going to go and make an SVG file that my machine needs to actually run. And then we're going to go and make this. So let's go and actually do that and see how we end up faring. And I think you guys are going to be pretty happy with those results. So give me a second. We're going to jump over to the laser, and I'll be right back. Awesome. So what you guys are seeing right now, this is actually a little time lapse. I don't want you guys to have to wait a long time to see this lasering, but we're lasering this part right now in my Glowforge on a little bit of a speed up. Where this is only showing you one of the 2 sheets, but here you can see it's lasering. It started off with that square part, then it went to the second part, and it did the inside edge, then it went to the outside edge, and then it went over to the tree. Here you could see the final result. And that's looking pretty good in my opinion. So I'm excited to actually show you what this is going to look like in real life. So let's go and grab that from the laser, and then let's start putting this all together. All right, so I'm back. We have our parts They're lasered. They look pretty darn good, I think. This is what it looks like coming right out of the laser. You'll notice that I put blue tape on my part. This is really just like a mask. It makes it so that there's less burn marks on my part. When I peel off the tape is what has all the burn marks on it, not the wood. It's a pretty good trick, but it does involve a lot of, like painstaking. It's called weeding when you try to take off all this tape. It takes kind of forever. So you take off all the tape. You're going to see here that we have our groove exactly where we want it. We have all of our tabs on the bottom as well. So it's really just a question of taking all the tape off and then fitting it all together. So let's go and do that real quick. I'm just going to go and push this all together. Give it a nice little squeeze. And voila! Here we have our jewelry tree. And I'm thinking to myself that this is actually looking really, really good. This is exactly what I was hoping for. I have my two pieces all pressed in. I have my base exactly how I wanted it. You could see those tabs on the bottom. And the reason, by the way, that all of this fits together as well as it does is because of that kerf compensation. So when we talked earlier about, yes, you can do a lot of things in Illustrator or Inkscape entirely in 2D, but why would you use Fusion? Well, Fusion and Illustrator, they can play really nice together. And so certain things I use Illustrator for, certain things I use Fusion for, but the best projects are typically the ones that I use both. So I started in Illustrator, I brought it over to Fusion. In Fusion, I was able to visualize the 3D on how these things are going to fit together, actually design the fit together, and then more importantly, I was able to actually have my kerf compensation in here as well. And that to me, I think is really important because otherwise these just wouldn't fit together. If you, again, as a reminder, if you just laser it without the kerf compensation, you wouldn't actually have a nice tight fit. And the result is that this thing would actually like kind of fall apart, which wouldn't be very fun at all. So to me, being able to do all of this is great. I think my wife is going to love this. I hope you guys like this too. I'm going to be posting this file online for you all, so if you want to download it and make it yourself or make changes to it, you can. But don't forget, you have this video. You can actually just follow my step-by-step, and in what turns out to be an hour and 20-ish minutes, you could end up having a jewelry tree of your own. And when you're done, it'll look exactly like this. I have a nice, better picture of it right here, but I think you guys are going to like it. I just want to say thank you all for watching my live stream today and jumping on this journey with me. Even though it involved a couple of hiccups, it was super fun for me. Thank you all for your time. I hope you have a great day. And don't forget, with Fusion 360, you can make anything. Thank you.